Hey guys, welcome to Pistons Talk post-game show. Hope you guys are having a great night. We have a lot to dig into with this game. Overtime again, back-to-back games for your Detroit Pistons. This game again, man, like there's so much to dig into. We're gonna get into it though. So let's go. I wanted to go through the quarters, and if you guys are new here, you've never, caught one of these Pistons Talk post game shows. What we do here is we break down the quarters. We'll go through first to fourth quarter. After I'm done with that, and we do hear from our sponsors over at DraftKings Sportsbook, we'll get into questions and comments. So if you guys have any questions or comments right now, definitely leave them in the chat, and we'll get to it. But let's get into this game. So I thought the first quarter, the Detroit Pistons came out aggressive. They came out like they were the team that wanted to win this basketball game. And one thing to note, obviously, with all the injuries, we had no Simone Fontecchio, no Jaden Ivey, no Tim Hardaway Jr. Asar Thompson is still reconditioning. Bobby Klitman still has the right calf strain. So Ron Holland did start in place for Tim Hardaway Jr., and I thought he did a pretty good job. First game starting as a rookie, I thought overall he had a pretty good game. We'll get into the fourth quarter and the free throws a little bit later. But Ron did start for THJ tonight. Did notice that Jalen Duren got two quick fouls, trying to guard Giannis on Antetokounmpo, who had 59 points tonight. He's just a wrecking ball, really hard to stay in front of it, especially in the painted area. But Duren did pick up two quick fouls on Giannis. And one player that I think was really highlighted, they mentioned it during the broadcast, was Isaiah Stewart, and his ability to defend Giannis. And Isaiah Stewart wanted to smoke with Giannis, obviously, tonight. We'll get into him a little bit later, too. I thought he did a pretty good job of guarding Giannis in the first quarter. The Bucks were really struggling to get going, but they take Isaiah Stewart off of Giannis. Paul Reed comes into the game and tries to guard Giannis, and I think that's when Giannis started getting going. He had over 20 points in the first quarter, and it looked like it was going to be one of those nights for him where he was just going to take over the game, and that's exactly what happened. But the Pistons do have the first quarter 27-24, having a 3-point lead. Transitioning into the second quarter, I thought Cade gave them some good minutes while Giannis was on the bench, and they took advantage of that. It was kind of weird, kind of looking at the rotations tonight. Like when Giannis was on the bench, they would bring Cade in, and when Giannis came back in, Cade was on the bench. I don't know if that was by design, rotation-wise, or maybe it was just a coincidence tonight, but it is something I did notice. I do also want to kind of give a kudos to a player that we traded for this summer in Wendell Moore Jr. I thought he gave really good minutes backing up Tobias Harris, who struggled to shoot the basketball tonight, 4 out of 15 from the field. Wendell Moore was defending his ass off, trying to get steals every possession, and just, came in, was ready, and gave the Pistons some pretty good minutes, I think, overall for the entirety of this game. Really like what I saw out of him. I really wish Tobias would have kind of stepped up his game offensively. I mean, 4 out of 15 shooting. It just, if he would have, shot 6 for 12, the Pistons probably win this game, right? But that wasn't the case. Tobias really, really struggled throughout the game, even though he's kind of had better games lately. But again, the Pistons do close off the second half pretty strong at halftime, 60-47. So, 13-point lead in the halftime. I was feeling pretty good watching the game, feeling pretty confident that they were going to be able to close this game out because they put two solid quarters together against a struggling Milwaukee Bucks team with no Chris Middleton and no Damian Lillard tonight. Transitioning into the third quarter, Malik Beasley, he did his thing. He really did. He was in the starting lineup as well. Want to give him a shout out. I think he made over 8 3-pointers tonight. And that was something that I was kind of keeping an eye on because if you guys remember, the Milwaukee Bucks decided not to, re-sign Malik Beasley. They went with Gary Trent Jr. And Malik really gave the Pistons everything he had tonight. I was really hoping that they would have, got this win for him because he kind of has a chip on his shoulder, obviously playing with Milwaukee last season, and they didn't decide to resign him. But he had a really, really good game. Seems like every 3-point shot he was gonna shoot I felt like it was gonna go in, but did want to kind of touch on that a little bit. And this is where I think the third quarter kind of went sideways. And I think the Pistons lost the game in the third quarter. And that might sound crazy to say, but Gary Trent hits, back to back, 3-point shots. And then Isaiah Stewart decides to tug on Giannis onto the Kumbo's jersey, gets ejected, flagrant two. The Bucks crowd was not on this game before that flagrant. Like they really weren't. They were pretty quiet for the most part. I thought it changed the whole momentum of that game. The Pistons seemed deflated after that play. Couldn't really, put consistent possessions together where they were, trying to stack onto their lead. I really thought, Stu getting ejected really changed the whole tempo of this game. I thought if Stu doesn't make that play, doesn't tug on the jersey, they may win this basketball game at the end of the day. I know some people are really going to hyper focus on Ron Holland missing not one but two free throws, but I think if Stu does not make that play on Giannis and tugs on his jersey, maybe they win this basketball game. Plays like that you just can't do. I mean, they teach you that when you're playing basketball growing up, never tug on someone's jersey. It's just a respect for the game thing. And I think maybe Stu got in the heat of battle with Giannis. Those two have had a history since his rookie year. I don't know what the beef is, if there is any, but seems like he always really gets up for playing the Bucks. I don't know what it is, but I really thought that changed the whole momentum of this game. But going into at the end of third quarter, Milwaukee gets their first lead, 85-84. So going into the fourth quarter, the turnovers started happening and just bad fouls. I thought there were a couple of fouls. Jackson on the Bucks was really guarding Cade hard all night. There was a double technical of both of them shoving each other. Dern had a foul where he shoved Gary Trent Jr. In the fourth quarter, gave the Bucks the basketball back. I thought overall the fourth was very nerve-wracking. I didn't know if we were gonna, pull out this win. I didn't know if we were going to get back into this game. Marcus Sasser, I do also want to give a shout out. He gave the Pistons some pretty good minutes tonight as well. Hit a really big time 3-point shot to tie the game. If you guys were watching on TV, you probably saw Brandon Jennings sitting courtside. He couldn't believe that Marcus Sasser hit that 3-point shot. I couldn't believe it either. But they ended up tying the game. It was 111, like 1 second or so. JB Bickerstaff, pretty much similar play a little bit, except this time it was Ron Holland trying to go up for the last minute bucket. He gets fouled by Giannis and he misses both of his free throws. If he would have just made one, they probably do win this game. But I'm not going to get on Ron too hard for missing those free throws. He's a rookie. Like I had mentioned earlier, I thought the whole tempo of this game changed in the third quarter with the flagrant two on Isaiah Stewart. I think if he doesn't make that, bonehead kind of foul, Pistons may win this game. But we go into overtime, and it just seems like we were gassed. Back-to-back games going into overtime, and the Bucks win this one, 127-120. Your Detroit Pistons, I believe they play the Raptors next, and I want to say that's on Friday. I don't have the schedule pulled up in front of me, but that's a game I think that they should possibly win against the Raptors. They're kind of like a retooling team, much like the Detroit Pistons. They have vets, they have young guys. I think it'll be a really competitive game that is going to be in Toronto, by the way. But I want to get into comments and questions with you guys as I see the comments and questions piling up in this live stream. But before we do get into that, we do have to hear from our sponsors over at the DraftKings Sportsbook, and we will be right back after this quick message, you guys. The Emirates NBA Cup is here. You can win big getting in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All 30 teams split into 6 groups every Tuesday and Friday, playing for the right to advance in single elimination in the in-season tourney. First time, here's something special for you guys. New DraftKings customers bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code Pistons Talk. That's code Pistons Talk for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5 only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER in New York. Call 1-877-8-HOPNY or text HOPNY 467369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 1-888-78-977 or visit ccp.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of the Boot Hill Casino Resort, Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, see dkng.com/bball. The Emirates NBA Cup is here. You can win big getting in on the action at DraftKings Sports. Okay, you guys, we are back from that quick message from our sponsors over at DraftKings Sportsbook. Do appreciate them. I want to get into comments and questions with you guys. This is the part of the podcast where it's all about you guys. If you have any comments, questions, we're going to talk about it on the podcast with you guys. So I did start a couple of your comments, and we're going to get to them. First comes from Organic Lindo. Shout out to him. He says, we have too many lapses in games of looking downright pathetic, and it's annoying. I do agree with you. There are times where they have a lead and they look really good. They're moving the basketball, playing defense, communicating. But there are a lot of times, to your point, Organic, that I don't know if it's just a consistency thing with them and they're a young team. And, the more games they play together as a group, they'll grow. But you see when the offense is flowing, it looks great. But to your point, yeah, there are lapses where we just look like a completely different team. And I think I'll just attribute that to them being young and still learning how to win basketball games because they won 14 games all of last season. And they're already at 5 right now. And what are we, 13 games into the season? They're 5-8. I think you kind of have to take the growing pains with this team, but you're starting to see like when the offense is flowing and they're playing defense and they're communicating, it looks good. We just need to put more consistent quarters together and close out games because each one of these games, 4 or 5 games or so, have really been down to the wire and really nerve-wracking to watch as a Piston fan. And like if I think they're nerve-wracking, I can't imagine what you guys think because I'm a very calm, laid-back person, as you guys know. I don't really swear too much. But I can only imagine you guys watching this game or even, placing money on the game. I couldn't imagine. But, yeah, I do agree with you, man. It's just the lapses are really frustrating as a fan when you're watching. Got a comment from Moses Rios. Every time I see the Pistons get a lead, I know that it doesn't last. Yeah, that's the thing, like kind of like to Organic Lindo's last, question and comment is like eventually they'll know how to close out a game when they have a big lead. Like the Atlanta Hawks game, when they were at home, when they, dropped 40 points on them and they had over a 20-point lead or 18-point lead, I believe it in that first quarter. Good teams put away their opponents very early in basketball games. And the Pistons sometimes kind of play with their food a little bit, the turnovers happen, bad possessions, not moving the basketball. Eventually what you want to see out of this team is closing out these games, keeping your foot on the gas and not letting your opponent and giving them opportunities to try to climb back into games. And so far, these last couple of games, that's exactly what they've done. Like we've seen them, move the basketball, good offensive sets, good defensive sets, good defensive possessions, but it's not there. Like consistency is something that good veteran teams have, and this is still a very young team. I think there's promise with this team. They're much improved from last season. I will take that. But at the end of the day, you want to see this team put it all together for a full 48 minutes. I have a comment from Cliff. He said, I thought Ron would make one free throw. I did too. I thought At least one. I'm not gonna get on him too hard, because I thought he played a pretty good game tonight, starting for THJ. But I thought overall, I think a lot of people are really going to fixate on the two missed free throws and point the blame at him solely for why they lost this basketball game. Um, when I thought, Tobias Harris was a player that I thought would have stepped up because Tim Hardaway Jr. and Jaden Ivey, weren't in that basketball game, or even Simone Fontecchio for that matter. But going 4 for 15, I just think is unacceptable to me. I mean, the Pistons brought you in to be that veteran leader and to try to take over these games in crunch time, and you kind of laid the egg tonight. But that's just my opinion. Maybe I'm being a little bit too hard on Tobias Harris, but I expect him to at least give the Pistons some pretty decent minutes out there because it's a veteran that we paid to, try to teach these young guys how to win. But again, that's just my opinion on it. But a comment from Dominique: the second Stu got ejected, that revitalized the Bucks. I felt the same thing. Like the energy in that crowd was very low. You could hear Johnny and Greg that were on the call tonight very clearly. Once that foul happened, third, fourth, and overtime, that crowd was loud. They were into it. They were hype. Uh, I, again, I thought it was a momentum shifter personally for me, but yeah, I do agree with you, Dominique. That's two ejection. Seems like the game was, in my opinion, over in the third quarter. I knew the Bucks were gonna probably find a way to win that basketball game, and they did. And Brooke Lopez and Giannis just absolutely torched us tonight. And I kind of want to get into Ethan's comment because he was talking about, Giannis scoring 59 and Brooke Lopez getting 29. He said, I would expect a 10 to 15 point game at best. Overtime that could have been won in regulation isn't bad considering. Yeah, I mean, like if you look at the box score and you look at Giannis's 59 and you look at Brooke Lopez's 29, yeah, like if you would have told me they would have scored that and would have been a pretty close game for the most part, you would have thought like something like that would have been a blowout or, a 10, 15 point loss. But again, they're being competitive, Ethan, which I think that's all we really ask for. It's just we have to find a way to close out these games and maintain a lead and take care of the basketball because if we take care of the basketball and we're not turning the ball over 15 times a game and giving the opposing team more possessions, more opportunities to score, we probably have more than 5 wins, you guys. Maybe we have 7. Personally, I think there are 2 games that, got away from us. I thought the Charlotte game got away from us. Um, and I can't remember the last one off the top of my head, but I feel like there are games this season where we could have won the game and we just didn't. And again, this is a young team. They're learning how to win. They're learning how to try to be consistent. And I think over time they will. It's just right now, it's just chaotic. Because when we do have a lead, it seems like it dissipates and we get into these, crunch time situations where the games are just so close down to the wire. It's exciting, but it's really like heartbreaking. Like I'm just gonna start calling your Detroit Pistons the cardiac kids because they give me chest pains every time I watch them down the stretch in fourth quarters. I don't know about you guys. Uh Team Savant has a comment, which I didn't actually notice this. He said Doc Rivers should have received a technical foul for being on the floor while a player was trying to shoot free throws. I did not see that. Now, if that is the case, the refs missed it. I mean, surprise, surprise, the refs missed something. I've been really on the refs' ass this year, you guys, and I'm not gonna beat my chest and say Detroit versus everybody, but I think the officiating as a whole in the NBA has been really, really bad. Not just for the Pistons, not just for the Milwaukee Bucks, just like league wide. Like some of the fouls that I'll scroll on Twitter, and I see other teams just not get foul calls. Like these refs have just been really, really bad, and I don't know why. Maybe they're just not locked in consistently. Like some refs aren't even paying attention to plays half the time. They're like staring at the floor. It's just like you're paid to, officiate a game, down the middle. And it seems sometimes it's not officiated down the middle. But yeah, the referees have been just really, really bad this season. I can't remember a season where I talk about officiating every game in terms of it just not being like consistent. A comment from Devon: that loss hurts, but we're learning, getting better. Pistons are being looked at different and will make the playoffs. then get respected this year. Yeah, this is a much improved team. I do want to state that. I don't want to harp on this loss too much because I thought, for a good, you know, three-ish quarters, they played pretty well. Um, and they got back into the game in the fourth quarter and forced overtime. But um, when you had a lead on Milwaukee, you had the pounce and you just didn't. And it's really hard to stop Giannis. Giannis is one of the best players in basketball, one of the best players in the world. But I think he tied Anthony Davis because Anthony Davis had 59 on the Pistons. I don't know if you guys remember that when the Pistons used to play at the Palace, but Anthony Davis had 59. Giannis had 59. It felt like Giannis probably could have gone for 70. Who knew he was going to hit his free throws and hit mid-range shots tonight? That was not on my bingo book, but he had a hell of a game. Kudos to him for just putting a game like that. That was a really entertaining game to watch and kind of like taking my Piston hat off. Just as like a basketball fan, you have to appreciate how good of a player he is, even though he is frustrating to watch as a Piston fan getting to the free throw line as much as he gets. I kind of feel like sometimes uh, the foul calls he gets are kind of like 50-50. But overall, this loss does hurt deep, and I do agree, but we are getting better. We have a comment from Quinn. With Kate being an actual point forward, who do you feel like an actual point guard and backup point guard should be with the current roster? If we continue as we are, Asar could be a point forward of the squad. This is a great question, Quinn. I appreciate you asking this. Um, an actual point guard and a backup guard. So we've talked about Cade being off ball. And Cade plays the point guard position, but to your comment, yeah, he is a point forward. Uh, I don't know. I don't think they're on the roster personally. I don't think they have a traditional like point guard, if you will. Asar does have some handles. He could possibly take some of that responsibility away from Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham. But I don't actually think they're on the roster. I think you would have to trade for more of a traditional guard, and I know that's something that a lot of people in the community talk about with Cade Cunningham is they don't view him as a point guard. They view him as a playmaker. They view him as that point forward, but they don't view him as like a traditional point guard, if you will, like a CP3 or a Rajon Rondo. A lot of those guys are distinct nowadays. Like you had a pass first point guard on this roster last year in Killian Hayes. He just didn't offer anything offensively. But to answer your question, Quinn, I just don't think they're on the current roster. I think you would have to trade for them if you want more of a traditional guard and try to play Kate off ball in certain situations. I wouldn't be opposed to getting more of a traditional point guard to help these young guys get a veteran point guard to trade for. Because the trade deadline ends in February and we're November 13th as we're recording this podcast. Um, I think there's room for improvement on this roster, but TBD on that. I'm just not really sure um, how Trajan Langdon wants to build this team long term. What JB Bickerstaff thinks of Cade Cunningham as a point forward or point guard, if you guys want to call it that, long term. I think Cade has had a really good season so far, but I think the turnovers are probably the most glaring issue, and I think a lot of the turnovers are just processing the play maybe a second or two too late and it turns into a turnover. I think he can get better with watching more film. But at the end of the day, I know a lot of you guys want that veteran point guard. You want that veteran center. Um, and kind of given like how bad this team was last year, I think you kind of have to tip your cap to just Trajan Langdon and like how he's built this team just in his first year or so. But overall, I've really really liked uh, what I've seen out of this team so far. Um, before we get into any more questions, you guys, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. I want to kind of scroll through these comments so there's no dead air space. But we will be right back in maybe like 20 or so seconds. Okay, you guys, we are back. I do have a couple of more, comments and questions, and then we'll probably wrap this podcast up. I have to wake up early for a doctor's appointment, so I don't want to be on here too long, and I hate waking up early. I don't know about you guys. I'm not good at it. So I do want to get some sleep, but I'm gonna get into three more questions, and then we'll wrap it up. So this is a question from Dominic Davis, who wants to know what I thought off the double tech on Cade. I thought Cade did make like a little bit of contact with Jackson, but I thought Jackson shoved him a little bit harder. I think in that situation, Dominique, the refs are just going to call a double technical because they don't. I don't know. Maybe they're afraid to call a technical on one guy versus the other. Um, but Jackson was just in Cade's grill all night. He defended him the best he could, and I think a lot of Pistons fans are probably going to look him up after this podcast is over. Maybe they looked him up after this game is over. Really good defender, just kind of just a defensive menace out there, kind of like Dyson Daniels was. Obviously, not the defender Dyson Daniels was, but Jackson did a really good job on K tonight. But the double tech thing, I think it's just refs are gonna do that like 99% of the time, unless there's like a really, really hard shove. Like if Cade would have, hit the ground, he probably would have got like a technical and they would have reviewed it for like a flagrant, but it is what it is with those double techs. Got a comment from QT. And his comment is last year at this time, the Pistons were in the middle of a 0-28 stretch. That is very important. Man, I think they said it on the broadcast. The Pistons didn't get their fifth win of the season until like late January. This team's improved. Like, there's no denying that there are clear improvements defensively with this team. At times, they look really good offensively. They get leads, they just can't keep them. And I think that's his consistency at the end of the day. You have to play for a full 48 minutes. You can't play for 30 and a half and expect to win basketball games in the NBA. All these guys are extremely talented. But I think, once they understand that they have to lock in for that full 48, this is going to be a team that's going to compete for Eastern Conference, playoff spots. I still think at the end of the day, this is a team that is going to compete for the play-in tournament. I think they have the talent to compete for the play-in tournament. Now, obviously, they have to stay healthy. And I didn't know Jaden Ivey got injured last night. Did not know Simone Fontecchio got injured. Obviously, what happened to Tim Hardaway, we knew he was not going to play tonight. Getting head lacerations, CT scan. Obviously, he's good. There's no damage there. But he's probably going to have to go into concussion protocol for a few days or so. But as long as this team stays healthy, and we've seen how they compete night in and night out. Outside of the Knicks game, they really have not been out of games. They've competed. It's just putting together, a full 48 minutes, putting together just 4 full quarters and winning basketball games. And I think, being a young team, the inconsistencies are going to happen at the end of the day. But I'm proud of the progress with this basketball team. I don't know about you guys. We'll go to one more comment. And this comes from Raphael Rome. And it has to do with Tyus Jones. And I kind of want to get into this because I've seen a lot of Pistons fans lately talk about Tyus Jones. We talked about it on the podcast a few weeks ago. I think we talked about it with, I want to say it was Corey Woods. Or no, I'm sorry, it was Lazarus Jackson from the Detroit Bad Boys. Shout out to him. He had mentioned that Pistons should get, Tyus Jones instead of Tobias Harris. Tyus Jones never was going to come here. Never was going to come here. Tyus Jones had made it known, I want to be a starting point guard on a basketball team. He didn't want to be a backup. Pistons offered a pretty big bag from reports from ESPN. They offered him money. He rejected it, obviously. He wanted to be the starting point guard on the Phoenix Suns. I doubt Cade was going to defer to Tyus Jones for him to be the lead point guard on this team. But at the end of the day, Trajan Langdon made an effort to go get a Tyus Jones. He made an effort to try to sign a Patrick Beverley. He obviously knew that this team needed a backup point guard. And I don't think he's done. I think that if there's a trade to be made where we can get a veteran point guard, get a ball handler, get someone to take the pressure off these young guards, he will do it. Obviously, it's very early in the season. I think, over the next month, December 15th is the day that you can trade players that you signed this summer. That's a very key date. If you're listening to this, write that down because there will be teams that will probably be active over the next, month or so, kind of like exploring that trade market. But Tyus Jones was never going to come here. The Pistons weren't just going to hand the keys to Tyus Jones. His camp made it known we want to start. And to the bias thing, the Pistons wanted the vet. There was mutual, interest from both sides. Tobias wanted out of Philly. Who could blame them? Their fans are ruthless. If you guys have ever interacted with the Philadelphia Eagles or 76ers or Flyers fan, those guys are ruthless. They're like 10 times worse than you guys after losses. It's pretty crazy. They're already over Paul George and everything, and Joel Embiid. But Tobias just has to put better games together. You can't go 4 for 15. You need to be consistent. You need to be a leader out there. You need to step up. But at the end of the day, Tyus was never going to come here. We do have one more comment from Mega Hustle, and then we'll probably wrap this podcast up. I always say one more, but I did see a comment from him. And you guys are just naming random Pistons in the chat. I love it. I love you guys. This is a comment from Mega Hustle. I did kind of want to answer this. When will Asar play? Now, I found it really interesting. Now, I don't know this to be official, but you guys can go back. I believe the Detroit Pistons posted their Asar interview the day he got cleared, the day we did the podcast. I didn't really pay attention to it. Basically, I think Cody Davis was the one that answered or asked the question to Asar saying, do you expect to make your return in January against your brother when the Pistons play the Houston Rockets? Now, people are speculating that Asar may be out maybe another month or so with the reconditioning, Mega Hustle. I don't know that to be the case. I do know that he did get cleared. Like you guys, we all got the tweet from Shams Charania. He is working out. But people kind of, pointed towards Christian Coloco, who got cleared, but it took him a month just to get back into NBA action. Now, if you kind of want to disconnect the dots with that, maybe Asar is out another month. I don't know. I'm not reporting anything. I'm not saying anything that I don't know. I don't know any more than you guys, but I thought it was really interesting. Go watch the interview if you haven't already. Detroit Pistons posted it on their Twitter account, and Cody Davis asked the question to Asar saying, is your return date around January? I thought that was kind of reading the tea leaves a little bit. Maybe Asar is going to be out a little bit longer than we did expect, but really, really appreciate this question, Mega Hustle. I did want to kind of talk about it. I saw some people on Twitter talking about Asar's return date. We haven't gotten anything. If we do get anything, I will tell you guys. I'll put it out, but as of right now, we just don't know. But I am going to wrap up this podcast. You guys are cracking me up in the comment section. If you're listening on the podcast audio side, we got a bunch of Pistons fans in the chat right now, just naming random Pistons, John Lure, Brandon Knight. I love you guys. But I'll see you guys Friday. Hope you guys have a great night. Again, your Detroit Pistons lose to the Milwaukee Bucks in overtime, 127-120. See you guys on Friday. Take care. Have a good night. Peace.